I want to make Luke wish he'd never met us.
It's the end of Megan's world as she knows it. Let's break down Cruel Summer Season 2, Episode 7 and find out just what happened. What's going on, y'all? Lisa here, and it is time to talk all things Cruel Summer Season 2, Episode 7. This episode is titled, It's the End of the World. As we finally make it to the New Year's Eve party with only 3 episodes left, some pieces are starting to fall into place for what happened to Luke. Now, they're very much trying to set up Ned as our prime suspect, which I honestly think is just to throw us off. Now, those of you, though, that thought that Ned and Steve have some beef over stuff, it seems like they definitely do, and it's over property lines. But yeah, Megan's world is really coming crashing down this episode, and is it bad that I don't feel entirely bad for her? Like, as Steve says this episode, actions have consequences. But let's get into this week's recap. As always, there are time codes down below for each timeline and the theory section, so you can skip around if you want. So this episode takes place July 31st in 1999 and 2000, and then in the middle is December 31st, 1999. Now, kicking it off with summer 1999, the girls wake up with a hangover from the party, and Megan is just like, oh, maybe Luke, almost barfing when we tried to kiss is a sign that this shouldn't happen. And, well, Isabella's actually being very encouraging here. And then Luke comes over and things are a bit awkward, but Isabella plays wingwoman, suggesting that Megan go help Luke get the cabin ready for the storm that's coming. And at the cabin, we see Luke and Megan pretty much realize they haven't hung out, just the two of them, in a while, and you can feel the tension. Then they find their walkie-talkies and go play out one of their missions like they did when they were kids in the woods. And that's when we get to see Luke's first run-in, it seems like, with a somewhat new neighbor, that's Ned, as we learn that Luke is really bad with directions, especially in the woods. Now, I'm going to bring that up more a bit in my theory section. But of course, Ned comes out, has his gun, is like, you're trespassing, and Luke's just like, I'm so sorry I got turned around, but Ned's just being his gruff self, but the sound of the feedback of Luke's walkie-talkie is really annoying him, so Ned actually fixes Luke's walkie-talkie, but then tells, Luke that privacy is important to him and to not trespass. Well, it seems like Luke's definitely shaking in his boots, but he runs off, finds Megan at the dock, and they finally share their first kiss. Now onto the winter 99 timeline, where we finally get that damn Y2K party, and it sets up for what will be an explosive next episode probably, so yeah, we're still not quite there. But just as a refresher, last episode we had Luke kissing Isabella after the Chatham plunge, and then he ran crying to Megan before Isabella could say anything to tell the lie that Isabella kissed him. So this episode, it's no surprise that Megan is very cold to Isabella when Isabella comes upstairs to ask Megan if she's ready to go for the party. Megan then asks how the plunge went, hoping to get something out of Isabella, but Isabella, of course, is just like, it was cold and wet, probably won't do it again. Then she says her New Year's resolution is to start fresh and be less of a slob, and of course Megan takes a jab at her.
Wow. You do like it messy, don't you?
Oh man, this episode, lots of passive aggressiveness and just passive stuff, like the way these people just don't straight up say how they're feeling or ask what's bugging somebody. Starting to get on my nerves, although I guess I can't really complain because I'm exactly the same way, actually. But yeah, after that jab, Isabella walks away. So after that awkwardness, we have Luke and Megan going shopping for New Year's Eve party favors and stuff, and they really waited till the morning of the party to do this. Like, I'm surprised there was stuff left, but I guess it's a small town. Maybe not everybody's throwing a party or everybody's going to this party, so yeah. And somehow magically he sets up for this party in like a matter of hours. Teenage boy doing that by himself? I don't believe that. Well, Megan ends up bringing up the kiss with Isabella and asks Luke what he thinks Isabella wanted out of it. And that's when Luke goes on the defensive, of course, tries to paint himself as the good guy here, saying and trying to paint Isabella in a bad light, calling Isabella jealous and possessive, and Megan says that she's never seen that. Okay, here I'm like, Luke isn't totally wrong here because we've seen Isabella be kind of obsessed and possessive over Megan, right? Always asking if she's going to hang out with Luke and other things. But the fact that Luke is using that to make himself look better when it wasn't actually the case this time, that Isabella was in the wrong, is kind of just like, ugh, you want to smack him upside the head, right?
Maybe she wants to break us up so that she can have you all to herself.
Interesting. I mean, that has been a theory all along, right? Maybe Isabella took out Luke to have Megan for herself, kind of this obsession thing that we had, which obsession was a theme in season 1, but that was more the girl who was obsessed with the other one's life and wanted that whole life. This is more, she's obsessed with this person and having like family and a best friend because she doesn't really have anything. But I don't know. I'm starting to like waver a little bit on that theory of like Isabella playing like obsessed fan here, or obsessed person. Now, as they're leaving the store in the parking lot, Megan runs into Ned, and Ned completely loses it when he sees Megan wearing a Y2K party crown, saying that she's not taking Y2K seriously, it is not a joke, and he grabs her like he's starting to go off the rails a little, and that's when Luke steps in, and Ned and Luke get into this altercation, leading to Ned slamming Luke against the car and saying that Luke's just like his daddy Steve, and that, you know, he's never had any rules or consequences, and that Luke's gonna get a harsh wake-up call and it might be his last. Yeah, so there's a threat from Ned to Luke, is why we're really shaping Ned up to be the main suspect here. So they're just showing Ned's aggressive behavior this episode, how he's a little bit nuts, and how he threatened Luke. I feel like it's just too much laid out right there in front of us. Now, when Luke and Megan get back to her house, she's kind of upset with how Luke handled things, and she says Luke needs to chill and that she's never seen Ned this mad. Then Luke gets a page, which kind of made me laugh because I forgot about beepers and pagers. Oh, what a wild time that was. But he gets a message from Tim saying that the party can no longer be held at that guy's house because the parents are coming home early. So now Megan is actually kind of relieved. Megan isn't feeling well, and she kind of wants Luke to call off the party, but no. Party boy Luke is determined to throw this best party to the end of the century and give Megan a night that she'll never forget. So he suggests throwing the party now at the cannery down by the water where his dad Steve just bought, you know, it's a place his dad just bought in order to put stores in, but it shouldn't be busy this time of the year. Luke, though, then gets summoned by Steve to Steve's office, where Steve really lays into Luke for getting into a fight with Ned because a bunch of people saw it in public and have been calling Steve, and you know how Steve hates to be embarrassed in public and to have people know his business. So yeah, we find out also that Ned is having a war with Steve over property lines up at the cabin, and it's costing Steve a fortune. So yeah, those of you who guessed that there was lots of bad blood between these two were correct. But yeah, Steve won't really even let Luke get a word in to explain himself, and when Luke does get to say something, Steve just lays into him, says be smarter and that actions have consequences, and Steve's just a real dick, man. Because it's like, really, Steve? Really? Because what consequences did Brent have for filming the sex tapes? You put all the blame on Luke for embarrassing you, and all Brent did was get like a little slap upside the head. Like, this man, everybody on this show just frustrates me so bad. But we see maybe a little bit of Brent's good side here, because as Luke leaves the office, he runs into Brent, and we actually see Brent be nice to Luke as he gives Luke the keys to the cannery for the party. Meanwhile, like I said, Megan hasn't been feeling good, so she finally takes that pregnancy test, which we learned about, you know, in the previous episode that Isabella found them in the trash on New Year's. And yes, Megan is indeed pregnant, and she's freaking out. We then head to the party where everyone is debating, you know, if the world's going to end, and Jeff is, of course, documenting and filming people's resolutions, and Isabella ends up finding Megan at the party. Megan's by the drink bowl, and things are still a little bit awkward as Megan pours Isabella a drink, and when Isabella asks why Megan isn't drinking, Megan lies, saying that she's already had plenty of drinks and is pacing herself. Yeah, they're still cold to each other, and then Megan finally is like, is there something you want to tell me? And Isabella is kind of like, what?
What did Luke say? That you kissed him. Last time I checked, Ride or Die didn't include macking on my boyfriend. Yeah, that never happened.
Yeah, so Isabella comes clean saying that Luke kissed her, and then Megan is still upset because Isabella didn't tell her and is like, well, what about your loyalty to me?
I just figured that he made a mistake, so I let it go. But you clearly wouldn't have believed me anyway. That's not true, isn't it? You always pick his side over mine.
So yeah, Isabella's just like kind of thrust in a bad spot here. If she told her, she'd probably get yelled at and Megan wouldn't believe her. But if she doesn't tell her, then Megan yells at her being like, you should have told me. So I don't know if Isabella could have won in this spot. So after learning the truth, Megan goes to run off to find Luke to confront him, but she can't because he's outside with those two douchey friends that he has who are joking about juggling two girls at once and whatnot, and razzing on Luke and just like gassing him up about, you know, Luke and Isabella and Megan and the tape. And well, what does little man Luke here do? He puffs up his chest to try to make him look like a man and brags to these guys about how he can juggle two girls. In fact, he made a major move on Isabella after the plunge. Maybe more of what those guys saw on the tape is in store, and that Luke says he's just practicing for college, and the guys are just like cheering him on, rooting him on, being douchebags, and Megan is of course pissed because she overhears all of this and she's kind of seeing Luke's true colors. He is not the good guy that she thought he was. Now, on her way to find Isabella, she ends up running into Jeff and tells him her resolution.
I'm gonna take charge of my own life, my destiny. Stop being played.
No matter how well you think you know someone, you don't. I can still surprise you.
You know what? We always thought that Megan was this like good girl. We saw little bits of like she could maybe be a little bit conniving, but here she is ready for revenge. She is angry. You do not want to get her angry. Megan ends up telling Isabella that, you know, she was right about Luke this whole time, and they apologize to each other, but now Megan wants payback.
I'm not letting him off that easy. He's not gonna get away with this. What are you thinking? I think we should get some serious payback. I want to make Luke wish he'd never met us.
That was a complete 180, right? Like, she's not even worried about the fact that she's pregnant now. She is just worried about making this boy pay for lying to her about kissing her friend. And oof, Isabella's eyes kind of scare me at the end of that scene, man. Who knows what she's capable of, because, you know, maybe Lisa wasn't an accident. Seeing Isabella's eyes like that, I'm like, maybe this girl can do some damage. But it seems like these two start to make some kind of plan, and Isabella leaves the party while Megan goes and finds Luke, and they watch the ball drop. It turns to midnight, the world doesn't end, and then she tells him they're going to go to the cabin to celebrate, and you know what? That horny boy is all in. So yeah, we're setting up for the mess that happens New Year's Day, the last day supposedly everyone saw Luke. Now for our summer 2000 timeline. Megan's lawyer comes over, and he is not happy and says that they've been called down to the sheriff's office because Megan is officially being charged, but he's not sure why. Well, it turns out she's not actually being charged with anything related to Luke's murder, but she's being charged with a misdemeanor for fraud for making fake IDs and copying a government seal. Yeah, it seems like Megan is just lucky she did all this while she was a minor, because if she did this as an adult, they said she'd be going to jail. But now Megan's freaking out because this means she's going to lose her scholarship and she can't go to college, hence the end of her world. Yeah, there's quite a few end of the worlds here. There's one, her finding out she's pregnant. Then there's her finding out that her boyfriend's a douchebag, and now here she is losing her scholarship. Even though I guess Megan should have known that risk, right, when she started taking those hacking jobs. Like, something was bound to come back and bite you in the butt. Meanwhile, Steve is hellbent, obviously, on proving someone is responsible for Luke's death, so he's had a private investigator following Megan around, and he shows Brent what they've found, which is that Megan has been a hacker for hire and sells to interested buyers, and she's been pictured with Ned, who brought her, obviously, into this job. Now Steve is setting his sights on Ned, who Steve says is unhinged after having, you know, years of lawsuits, complaints, and threats, and Brent is kind of like, okay, are you sure? Like, why would Ned want to kill Luke? And Steve, of course, brings up that scuffle with Luke in the winter timeline. But did anybody else notice here in this scene how nervous Brent kind of gets just hearing all of this talk from his dad? Megan then runs into Jeff, where she finds out that he is indeed the narc. Yeah, it seems like Jeff got busted trying to buy beer with his fake ID and made a deal with the sheriff. Megan's kind of like, did you not stick up for me? Did you not try to cover for me? And Jeff says he tried to, but then he couldn't explain the copying of the government seal, and he kind of just broke and had to cave and tell the sheriff it was Megan, and Megan is fuming.
So you gave me up, even though I kept your secret.
I have a feeling, though, that the sheriff already knew, because we know that he saw the girls in the bar way back in the day, and he knows how smart Megan is. So I feel like he had a hunch. He just wanted someone to confirm that, and Jeff was an easy target. I'm also guessing that the secret that, you know, Megan is saying that she kept for him, but also is what she blackmailed Jeff over, that we still don't know, is how much or how he made the money to pay for his film equipment. That's still some little mystery here that I don't even know if it's ended up going to be important or if we'll even get that answer. We then have Brent warns Megan and tells her that Steve had a private investigator follow her, and how Ned stole millions in intellectual property from his old job, assaulted his boss, and put him in the hospital. Brent warns Megan that she needs to stay away from Ned because Ned is going down, and if she's not careful, Ned will take her down with him. Megan then makes a last-ditch effort to save her scholarship by going the one place that Brent told her not to Ned's, to ask Ned if he can hack the system to remove the misdemeanor, but even Ned is like, yeah, I can't do that. There's a paper trail already for this. It's not possible. So yeah, this doesn't help Megan, who is just continuing to freak out, while Ned tries to tell her that she doesn't need a degree and to go to college and to give into the rules, but Megan says yes, Megan just is like, yes, I need to go to college, and, you know, begs to differ, then warns Ned that Steve has it out for him and is investigating Ned's past, which makes Ned upset, and he storms down to his little lair and is like, if Steve can look into me, I can look into Steve. Then Megan sees that, you know, Ned has this whole security camera set up, which I'm surprised she didn't notice before when she was down there, because he's had it for a while. But she notices that one of the camera is pointing to the road, and she's like, have you always had that camera? And he says yes. And then we see that Steve is driving up, so Ned grabs his gun and tells Megan to sneak out the back. As Megan's sneaking out the back, of course, she runs into Brent, and Brent lets her go by, but gives her kind of this disappointed look. And then we have a big confrontation between Ned and Steve and Brent, with lots of threats, and Steve not thinking Ned will follow through on any of them. This timeline then ends with Megan getting a call from her principal just confirming that she has indeed lost her scholarship. And now we must wait until the next episode for the juicy stuff. But let's go ahead and take a look at the promo for that episode.
I am not going to let Megan go down for a crime she didn't commit.
Can you say the same thing about Isabella?
I want to try something different. We need to talk.
What the?
Okay, so we see that Steve is still on his mission. It looks like Debbie is now stepping in to like do whatever she can to figure out how to save her daughter. And I think we hear Steve say, what about Isabella? So is Debbie going to try to help both of them? What's going to go on there? We also get a glimpse at a bit of the revenge in the cabin. It looks like Megan obviously pretends like she's going to do something with Luke, ties him up to the bed, and then starts filming him, which we saw a bit of in previous teasers. So now let's get into theories and thoughts. So I'm thinking, with the revenge here, we have Megan tying up Luke to the bed and starts filming, probably in order to get a confession on tape, just to prove he's a dirtbag. Now, we don't see Isabella yet in this little teaser, but my guess is that she comes later and, you know, helps there, having the two girls be like, say what you did to us kind of a thing on tape. Then we know from this episode that Luke has a bad sense of direction and gets lost in the woods, so imagine him in the woods at night. I feel like we have seen in previous trailers him running in the woods in the dark, and it is the winter 99 timeline coloring, so what if they like get the confession out of him and then tell him to run while like chasing him or something like that? Just like how he got lost in the summertime episode, maybe that's what happens here, and he ends up on Ned's property, confronted by Ned. Maybe that's where the gunshot graze to the head comes from. And then what if Ned like freaks out, brings him back to the cabin where the girls are, they try to treat him, and like some of you said, give Luke the pain pills or the muscle relaxers, whatever it was, and then he maybe accidentally overdoses and they panic and they don't know what to do, so they throw him in the water. But I still need that coroner's report, because like if that boy was in the water since January to July, I don't know how they would have recognized him except maybe some clothes. Or could the girls be more sinister and capable of something even more like dangerous and wild? Part of me is like seeing this episode how Ned was kind of nervous and backed down a tiny bit from Steve. Like he talks this big game, but you think he, you know, would, if Steve's threatening him, shoot at him. Maybe don't shoot him, but like shoot at him to scare him or shoot him through the sky. I thought something like that would happen, but that doesn't happen. Ned just looks nervous, but I feel like Ned is just one of those people who talks a big game but only shoots at birds, right? I feel like they're just trying to be too obvious with Ned as our suspect. Now back to Brent, who was looking real fishy to me in this episode, like he was guilty of something or that he knows something. That whole conversation with Steve when Steve was talking about what the PI found and showing the pictures and all of that, I just feel like Brent looked nervous, like he was gonna get caught, or like he was gonna slip and say something, or maybe like Ned was Steve was getting too close to finding something out, or the private investigator itself following people around is what's freaking him out. I don't know. Brent was acting real weird this episode. I don't know exactly how he'd be involved, but I feel like there's something more there. Because if this is a revenge plot with the girls, it sort of feels like a prank, right? And in the Summer 99 timeline, we heard Megan talk about how she and Brent used to prank Luke. Now, we don't see Brent at this New Year's Eve party. So what if Isabella goes to get Brent and then all three of them are there to teach Luke a lesson? I feel like that's Brent's video camera that Megan has and is using in that promo. Now, we didn't see that it's at the cabin the whole time. Did Isabella maybe go to the house to get that camera from Brent? And maybe she explained to Brent what's going on? Although Brent doesn't like Isabella, so I don't really know how that would work. Or has that camera just been at the cabin the whole time, which could make sense since that's where the sexy tapes were filmed. I don't know, but it seems like there was a tape made that night of whatever happened, so where is that tape? Why is no one freaking out about finding that? What if Brent maybe saw that tape and that's why he's nervous for whoever's involved? Like maybe he knows more. Also, there's the thing that Megan said to Ned in the Summer 2000 timeline about like, has that camera always been there pointing at the road? So what if now Ned has evidence from that night, depending on how far back his security cameras go, of who came to the property that night? That would incriminate Megan, even though I guess they already know that she was there, but you know, putting Isabella in there as well and anybody else who came through that way, I wonder if that's gonna come into play. I don't know, I feel like there's still a lot of possibilities, and part of me is really feeling like this whole thing could end up just being a mistake or an accident, and I'm not sure if I'll be satisfied with that conclusion. I'm also wondering, last episode you all noticed that Luke's screen name was online in the summer 2000 timeline, so if he's supposedly dead, how is he online? Unless someone else is posing as him or using his computer, or he actually is alive. But wouldn't Megan notice that Luke's online? Like, she's not fazed by that. She's just chatting away with Ned on there. So yeah, that kind of just brings up the whole, theory, is Luke actually still alive? And maybe they all just plotted this whole thing, in order to get like Steve's money or something. We know Luke wants to be out of his dad's shadow. Megan needs money. Isabella just wants to escape her past. Maybe Luke panicked during the revenge plot here, and he was like, you know what, girl, it's not me you should be going after. Let's come together and let's do something to benefit all of us. I don't know. That kind of seems weird. But yeah, maybe, like I said, maybe the girls torture Luke for a little bit and they realize, you know what? Let's take you down your dad instead. But also, how does the pregnancy come into here? Because she's not gonna, I don't think Megan's gonna tell him. Or maybe she does. I'm trying to think even now of more theories. It's like, what if Megan says it to Luke and it's on the tape, and maybe that tape gets back to Ned, or not Ned, maybe that tape gets back to Steve. Steve gets mad, and then Steve, is pissed at Luke again for embarrassing him, and then it's all just a cover up and Steve did something. Because I know a lot of you think Steve's very suspicious, right? Could everybody team up with Ned just to take Steve down? Is it too far-fetched? I don't know, but my brain is still, I still don't have like a clear idea of what's going on as far as like who's guilty. I feel like season 1, I kind of felt like I knew whose side I was leaning on. Like, there were twists and turns, but you could still feel like, okay, both girls were wrong, but there was one who I feel like was like a little bit worse, right? Maybe that's just me. But I feel like you could determine that maybe halfway through the season. Here, I'm still just like, they're really giving me this runaround, and I don't really know where I should fully be setting on. I don't know. I was fully invested in season 1. This season, it's okay. It's not as good as like season 1 was, but I'm curious if the end of this season will tie everything up, because I know season 1, people wanted that storyline to continue because there were enough loose ends maybe that it could, but do you think for this season they'll leave it on that kind of moral dilemma as well, being like who was in the right and who was in the wrong and debating because you could see both sides, or will they just wrap everything up nicely? I'm interested. I do want to see how that ends, but next episode, supposedly episode 8, is the big one. That's what the producers have said, or the showrunner, and so I'm excited to see what happens with this next episode. But yeah, I think that's enough of my nonsensical rambling. So let me know your thoughts on this episode down in the comments, as well as your new theories. Do you think Ned is too obvious to be a culprit? Do you think people are working together? Do you think Luke is actually maybe alive? And why hasn't the coroner given the audience, us, a full report yet? Let me know. Then don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of my recaps or any of my other videos. You can check out more of those videos actually right over here. And as always, my name is Lisa. Thanks so much for listening to me ramble and hanging out with me. I'll see you next time.